hope you came to the right man. I would say in 25 years or however long I've been acting, I've had very few jobs from auditions. And probably 75% of things I've done have just come from, there's a direct link between some other job I did in the past, and I can draw a quite clear but very erratic line that goes from, whatever the latest job I've done is, and probably the first or second job I've done. I've never been good at auditions. I think it's a particular talent that some actors have and some actors don't. And I think a lot of good actors are quite shy people, and it can take a couple of hours or even a couple of days to establish trust with somebody, and for you to feel comfortable enough to expose yourself in front of people. And then there's also it's supposed to be a kind of rebellious thing to do, acting. It's not really, and the idea of going into a room and pleasing people and giving them what they want is not something that I can really comes naturally to me. It'd be great if it did, but it doesn't, and I certainly haven't got any better at it over 25 years. I think it helps to have some really deep, proper equipment and not to be just doing it on an iPhone or an iPad. My brother has a pretty good camera and mic. I think the mic really helps, actually. I helped an actor friend recently with one, and he did get the job. It helps, I think, to have someone else with you who's directing or giving you some pointers. But he made a microphone out of a pair of iPhone earphones. He just took the end off and used it as a microphone, and it worked really well. I think it really helps to be able to hear. I think the fact that the self-taping thing has become the norm gives people a chance, because you can do it 50 times and send one in. A lot of people have decent enough equipment to do it at home, and the people at the other end will tell you it is acceptable to do something on an iPhone and send it in. I was with a director friend of mine. He was casting a TV series, and he showed me all the auditions, and these weren't even... some of them were self-taped, some of them were done in a studio, some of them were... And it was amazing how boring it gets after 4 or 5, and how people tend to do the same thing and look the same. And the people that stood out were the people who were, people stood out because they weren't, maybe even because they weren't good, and you still thought that's the person for the job, or because they had a particular tick, because they, got it wrong. So there's nothing wrong with getting it wrong and getting words wrong. Like in those showcase we were just watching there was one performance that I really liked, and one of the things that stood out was they said the wrong thing and then adjusted, because that's what people do in real life, and that was kind of interesting. So I think being a bit rough is not a bad thing. I definitely, as an actor, don't prepare as much as I used to. I mean, I do, and I do like to think I know what I'm doing, and I've learned the lines and all the rest of it, but don't give it too much more than that, as in, because you don't know how it's going to go, and you don't know what the other person is going to do, and something just like I've just did there, like struggling to find what to say is kind of a bit probably more natural than, knowing what you're going to say. I know that's a very obvious thing, but I think being the right person for the role is... I think a lot of it's in casting, that if the right people are cast, that shouldn't have to do too much kind of crazy... If 2 people come in super prepared, it's not going to work, is it? Because it's going to be like just 2... It could be like that, you know what I mean? Just fucking a clash of the preconceived ideas. And anyway, I don't know. Being fit, showing up on time. There's a lot of things when you're younger, you kind of think you're great, and I think it's important to show up with energy and not have been out, until 5 o'clock in the morning the night before, and just not having energy and being lazy and all the rest of it. I'm not really into that. I kind of did that a bit early on, but it doesn't really work. It's funny how you just don't really see it, that everyone else is going to be looking at you going, what a fucking twat. I'm not talking about any extremes. I never did any kind of really kind of stupid stuff, but and especially nowadays where everyone seems to be making stuff on a much more tighter, with much more limited resources, and which I think has has its positives as well as its negatives. But there's not really time for tooling around. Well, I would argue my point and try and understand their point, and then try and do it both ways, knowing that if you do that every time, that they can just cut together the film the way they want. But if you trust the director, you should trust the director, and you're. I've been right and I've been wrong about stuff like that. Sometimes they'd throw a line of dialogue at you. Like this happened to me recently, and I just there have been instances where I've said the line and it's been used. I think I can see a dodgy line or a great line, and if it's shit, I think it's just best to kind of argue your point and not say it, because it will be used, especially if they're that adamant that it's a great line or way of doing something or whatever. There's definitely been instances where I've gone in with an idea that was I should have fought my corner, but also equally the other way around, where I've been completely wrong. I think it's really important, because it's the only thing you've really got full control over, is either doing it or not doing it. I've been fortunate in that the career has been slightly erratic, given, as I was talking earlier about auditions not really factoring into it, because I never really got jobs from auditions. So, I would find myself working in 3 mediums quite a lot. Well, I mean, film and television aren't that different, but theatre, film and television, and in different countries. So, it was always, I had an opportunity to get far enough away from, wherever I'd been, to be forgotten, and then come back, and maybe got to play a different kind of role. I've tried to pick different types of things. I know it's never as varied as you think, and it's probably a lot of it is, in a similar vein. And then somebody will pick up on that, like, for instance, Jamie Traves, who made that Treacle film, and Treacle Jr. film, which was a collaboration, and it didn't just come purely from him, but his point being that he had first seen me doing some comedy, and I hadn't done any for years. So in the last couple of years, I've been trying to do, if there's anything I'm actively trying to do, it's to just play a few more light-hearted roles, and I've done a couple. They're never purely light. It's never a pure broad comedy. Well, that would be interesting. I usually watch stuff once. I used to watch it more than once, and I mean, I'm picky. It's picky enough. I'm picky enough anyway. Even watching it once is like you'd be picking enough holes, but to watch it like 6 times, you'd be fucking ruined.
Can you separate yourself from the character?
Well, yeah, but it is you as well. So you're seeing, when you're looking at, it's you physically, and also your interpretation and your effort at acting and being relaxed and being energized and having a personality and all the rest of it. So when you're picking at it, it's not just picking at the film or what you've been. It's usually yourself, and. It's very, nowadays there's so much stuff written about, with, in the olden days, and when I say the olden days, I'm saying maybe the late 80s when I was starting out, you could do something, and if it wasn't great, it would, just disappear, and people would write a few bad reviews. But now, even if you're in something that's really great, there's so much shit that's written on the internet, and so many, kind of different platforms and so many people who just want to, say you're great and say you're shit and all the rest of it, that it's quite, it depends on what your personality is. But if you've got a certain type of personality, you just keep going and dredging until you find the worst possible, nastiest shit that people write about you. And I know quite a lot of people get quite embroiled in actually looking through that shit. So I try not to do that. And also there's so many TV channels and internet channels that there's quite a market for subpar product because they can get it cheap and put it up there. So there's no escape, which is kind of okay, because if you do it, you should be doing your best. It should be your best effort. But, stuff doesn't go away. Everyone's been in the bill, by the way. I mean, I know it's in Ireland, everyone hasn't been in the bill, but someone has been, I don't know if it's been done, if people have put together a compilation of actors, like everyone has been through the bill. And I was talking to this actor, Peter Fernando. He said he was in it 8 times. Every 2 years, you're allowed to play a different character. I had a mate from Liverpool who was like, every 2 years he was on as another, like robbing somebody's fucking wheels off their cars, or something with a crowbar, because Naomi Watts was in the bill the same year she was in Mulholland Drive. There's a fact. It was Robin Lefebvre, who's a theatre director, who directed the first professional stage job I had, which was in London. And it was, and he was the fellow who said also that casting is like 90% of it. And he never really did too much as a director. It was more like he was like just a kind of engineer, just kind of pushing stuff here and there and adjusting the parts which had been carefully selected. And I think he said, know who you are and say it. As in, just say it. But be the right person, which is going to inform how you say it. I think over the years that the other thing that I have certainly learned is it's about you, and it is about your personality, and you can add bits onto it, or you can, but it's got to come from you, which is why it's probably important to live a life and to, have the first few years I was in London, I really regret not having lived more of a life and not having just had more real jobs and stuff. I spent a lot of time walking around London and walking around Hyde Park. I mean, I was listening to stuff and learning stuff and all the rest of it, but I should have engaged more in the real world and just worked in shops or bars or whatever, and I didn't. And that's something I would not, shy away from. I suppose I was lucky in that I was working a fair bit and I didn't actually have to. But otherwise, you're kind of just isolating yourself, and maybe that's why I ended up playing some of those fucking roles. Hanging around too many fucking cemeteries. But I went to school opposite a cemetery, so I've had it in my DNA. And it wasn't a bad cemetery, it was a Glasnevin Cemetery, I went to school directly across the street from there, and I spent many afternoon over there, hanging out, smoking, and, chilling out. Yeah.